Ah, yes, another retro video. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hi, I'm Laura, and we're going to get right into today's 2 illustrations. Feel free to skip ahead to the second chapter for the car illustration if you just want to watch that one. All right, let's get started. I have this really cute box, and I'm going to pull out the first one. And this is a photo of I would say, late 60s supermarket. And in the checkout line, I was so captivated by this one, so I chose this one first. We've got our S-Gel pen that I've been using a lot lately. And I'm also going to be working with the Dr. P.H. Martin's with the dropper. That is the concentrated radiant liquid watercolor, not the Hydrus. This is the radiant. This is the sketchbook that I'm going to be working in today. All the links of all the supplies I'm going to be using today are going to be listed down below in the description. All right, so this sketchbook is amazing. I absolutely love it. I bought it at Hyatt's, All Things Creative in Buffalo, New York, and I will link that video above as well. But you can also probably find it on their website, which will be linked down below in the description. And you could probably also do a search for it as well. If I can find it on Amazon, I'll put the link in. And the paper towels I use are the Viva. I prefer those. The cotton is superior for soaking up water out of your paintbrush. All right, so I'm going to do a speed drawing for this sketch. It did take me a little bit, and I'm just going to speed through this for you so that way we can get to the important and fun part of the illustration. So I've been focusing a lot this year on not pre-sketching in pencil on some of my illustrations. Well, a lot of my illustrations. I'm really trying hard to focus on being purposeful with my lines and committing my lines, and worry more about the looking at my subject matter and putting my pen down on the paper versus it being absolutely correct. I didn't want to spend a lot of my time erasing and resketching and erasing and resketching. So if it's a little wonky in some spots, that's okay, because this is a sketch, it's in my sketchbook, and it's art. And I wanted to worry more about the creative process in the rendering versus the drawing in this. So working just with this S-Gel pen, which bleeds a little bit with the Dr. P.H. Martin's, not as much as if I just put gouache down direct, but the Dr. P.H. Martin's liquid watercolor kind of seals it just a little bit from it blurring too much. It will blur and bleed, but not as much as if I just put the gouache down direct. So yeah, so that in a nutshell. I'm just concerned today about showing you the final sketch and then adding the Dr. P.H. Martin's with the gouache combo. So this mixed media process of adding these two different water-based paints, that's like the key to this video. So I want to make sure I showed you this first. All right, so I'm showing you in the photo the different elements of value. So when you're working from a black and white photo, I first squint my eyes and I look at the values of super light and the values that are super dark. So when I add in these Dr. P.H. Martin's from my swatch chart that I showed you back in another previous video, and I'll link that one right now above, so you can watch how I did that if you didn't previously see that. I'm choosing a yellow because I'm going to start off with my lighter colors. I'm choosing the yellow, the ice yellow first, and that is going to hit all of those highlighted areas, because when I add the gouache in over the top, it will be super light. And because the lighting tracks that are in this photo are super bright, and it is my brightest area in the photo, I want to make sure I preserve that. So this ice yellow is the lightest color that I have. It's number 40C, so it's in the C collection of the Radiant watercolor collection. So I'm just using the eyedropper and just squeezing out some trails of this color and just dragging it across. Now, yes, it soaks in a little bit, but with this big mop brush that I'm picking up, this number 4, it will blend out nicely, and it doesn't soak in kind of right away. It just pools up a little bit, but some will soak in if you leave it there long enough. So I'm just hitting in these light areas first. So I just want to captivate the essence of the store and the brightness of the store with this ice yellow. So now that I've got the ice yellow down, I'm going to look at the next value out. So I'm looking at the bags, I'm looking at the counter, I'm looking at the areas that are next. If I looked at a spectrum of values, black and white values, from very light, like 0%, 5%, 10% tint, all the way to 100% in the shade, I'm looking at about 10% right now. So I'm building up my values in my color translation as per the black and white values. So I'm adding in this this yellowy orange color, and I'm adding that in for the counter and for some of the shadowing in the ceiling. Now, again, I don't know what colors these are, and this is something that I've talked about in previous videos. Just from experience from living in the 70s, if you've lived in the 70s and 60s, you have an idea of what some of the colors were, or some of the color themes and schemes that were used in these stores also for their clothing. So you can pull out some of these colors based on value, and play around a little bit with the colors. So I kind of remember some of these colors being like those burnt oranges, the olive greens, the gold yellows. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be picking and pulling for this video. And some of those yellow ochre browns and yellow ochre, what do I want to say, like deep, rich golden colors. If you are not familiar with the colors of this time period, feel free to go on Pinterest or a Google search and look for some photos that were from this time period. There is no date on the back of this photo, so I'm assuming it's like 1967, 1968-ish. So you can Google supermarkets from the 70s or supermarkets from the late 60s and get an idea of the color schemes of the markets, the clothing that people wore, the colors of the clothing, how they wore their hairstyle. So that'll also help you in tonal highlights when you get to the details. All right, so these color swatch charts that I made are already invaluable to me. I've been using them for the last couple months now, and already they've proven to me that they were a great investment and a great idea to do, especially when I took all the collections and put them in color range order. So again, I like the olive green, and I think the smock jackets that the checkout girls wore were olive green. So I'm going to be making them olive green today. If you find a photo like this, or if you want to use this photo and pause the video and just study the photo and draw from the photo, please feel free. Also, feel free to experiment with your own colors. If you want to make it gold, if you want to make it orange or brown or even like an ivory color, feel free to play and explore. All right, so I have a good range of I have a good range of colors down right now. And I'm going to be starting to add in some detail colors. Now, this is just like a base coat that I'm adding down first. And when I start to add in the gouache, you'll see how the both kind of marry together to make a super nice illustration. But the purpose of adding the Dr. P.H. Martin's first is to, one, tint the white paper. Number two, it also gives a bright luminosity beneath the gouache. So let me see here. If I am going to add in, say, the ceiling lights that I already have right now, it's great to have that yellow there. It's great to have that yellowy orange there. But when I add the white gouache later, it makes it more luminous, and you're able to see the pure bright color of the Dr. P.H. Martin's Radiant watercolor that's very concentrated through the matte gouache. Now you'll see that I'll be using the gouache very liquidy instead of the traditional way of using gouache, very thick and opaque. So we'll get to that point. But for right now, the process of adding in the Dr. P.H. Martin's, continuing the values, continuing to add the details in based on the tonal values of that black and white photo. And if you have any questions throughout this process, please drop me a comment. I'm more than happy to answer you back and help you out the best way I can and give you suggestions. If you've tried this technique before, or if you paint like this, oh my gosh, I would love to hear about it. Let me know how this process works out for you. So because her coat is super dark, I chose to make her coat navy blue or like an indigo blue. It's got some colors of peacock in it, peacock blue. And I thought that blue would be a great standout against that burnt orangey color of the checkout behind her. I thought that would make a great separation between the two. Again, this is not the final color for a lot of this illustration. This is only dropping down some tinting and some staining. I wouldn't say staining because it doesn't really stain. Some tinting and some blocking in just so these colors will show through. So all the items in the background are exactly that. They are background subjects. So when I look at this composition of this photo, when I study it, the main subject matter of the photo is the gentleman and the checkout lady. Now he's handing her money for what she put in the register. And so that transaction right there is the subject matter. And the woman that is with him is also part of that. But the main focus is the transaction between the gentleman and the checkout lady. Now, the rest of the background is what you would maybe say is like an adjective in a story. It's helpful to describe the time period. It's helpful to describe what kind of store they're in. And it's just basically background information. So I don't want to put too much detail in that because I don't want that to become the focus. And I want to push that in back into the background. So that way that focal point is truly brought forward. And when you first look at this photo, that's the immediate thing you see is that transaction between those two. Now, in the photograph, a lot of the imagery in the background or the middle ground is in focus. It's sharper, and I want to push that back a little bit. So you'll see when I add the gouache in those steps, I kind of push that back a little bit, make it a little softer. So again, using your creativity and using your background knowledge of how you want this composition to look as you're playing with color will help you make your illustration become successful. And that's those elements of design that you can incorporate in. So I'm just finishing up adding in the Dr. P.H. Martin's. Again, all the items that I'm using, all the supplies will be listed in the description below. I'm using so many different colors of this radiant concentrated watercolor from all different collections. If you happen to see them a la carte anywhere, pick them up individually, or you can buy the collections. Okay, so I'm pulling out from my brush stash some brushes I'm going to be using for the gouache. So right now I'm completed with the Dr. P.H. Martin's. This is what it looks like. So it bled a little bit, but that's okay. It didn't bleed through the back. That's awesome because I'll be using the back of that page for something else. So this is damp. It's not completely dry, and that's good because I want to be able to use this white and pick up some of the color underneath. So the lights, again, are the brightest areas of that photo. So much so that you can't even see the detail really in the lights fixtures themselves. So I'm going to create that with this zinc white in the watercolor, or zinc white in the gouache. And again, I'm using Winsor Newton gouache, and it is dried. Very rarely do I work from fresh gouache that is, fresh right out of the tube. I have used dry gouache in my palette for 32 years now, I think, and it works perfect for me. I'm going to have a video coming up on how I use my art supplies and why I have my palette set up the way I do, and that'll probably explain a little bit more down the road. But so still picking up the gouache, the white, and adding in detail in on the counter. Now you can see the colors coming through as I paint, and that's exactly what I want. The counter's old. The counter is, items have been sliding across the counter, and it's probably that, like Formica, I guess you would say, the laminate countertop. And as you have seen probably throughout your life, that the countertops get very worn after a while. And so a countertop that might have had some of that orange colored has been scuffed up over the years with different items scraping across it. So creating that illusion of that time period gives that little detail that helps tell that story. So I've got some yellow ochre that I'm adding in to this gentleman's blazer or coat, sweater coat. Again, I'm kind of using my artistic license and creating a value of color that is within that tonal value in the photo. It's like I would say a 50% gray. And so I wanted to translate that into color that was around the same tonal value, around the same 50% value for color. So this illustration took me about 5 hours. So I really chopped this up into the important key parts for you for this half-hour video. If you want to see a full-length video on a smaller illustration that's manageable for about a half an hour, let me know in the comments, because I will certainly paint something in real time that is not chopped up so much. But again, I just wanted to show you some of the key points that make this illustration successful with the Dr. P.H. Martins and the gouache. So I'm assuming this is like aluminum bent over on this register that's behind them. And so I wanted to create that reflection and highlight on the metal because the light is bouncing off of that and creating those sheens. And so I'm mixing some gouache colors now to create some matted and mute colors over the top of this grocery bag. Back at this point, they were using all paper, and so the paper bag is very muted and frosted. So I'm adding in some tonal values in their faces, and I will come back in and add some more detail. So again, I'm going back in with another layer of white gouache. Because this is very thick watercolor paper, the color does soak in, and I am using the paint quite thin, and so it soaks in. So I'll need to add, a couple layers on top to get to the opaqueness that I'm looking for with some of the colors. So she has her hair in these really cute rolls underneath her scarf. And so adding in the yellow ochre for the highlights helps tell the story again of the time period with those beautiful rolls that she has. So with this thinner brush, I'm adding in some more highlights and looking at the details in his jacket, the gather around his wrist with the coat, the light that's hitting the back of his coat also gives a nice separation between her coat and his coat. And then his pants are quite dark. If I look at the photo and I squint, his pants are pretty dark. One of the darkest values in the photo, besides the checkout lady's hair. So I'm making sure that I add enough gouache on there in darker values to create that. So here's what I've got so far. Looks like a mess, doesn't it? I promise you it gets better. The more layers you add in, the better it'll get. Now, you can certainly stop at this point and say, okay, well, I understand the concept now. And you can see that the Dr. P.H. Martin's and the gouache work quite well together. And it can be a piece of art, a sketch in itself, and you can move on. Or you can keep going, and if you're really enjoying it, and create a really cool finished piece in your sketchbook. All right, so I'm going to let you watch the rest of this. I will jump back in when I have something I want to share with you. But again, it's just playing with color, playing with values, and adding in details to create the story from that pretty cool retro time period. All right, so after many hours of working on this and adding in details up towards the foreground, I'm pretty much done. Adding in just a few little details, just a softer highlight on this grocery bag, and just checking it over just to see if I need to add anything else. Am I happy with it? What else can I do to tell the story of what's happening in this really cool photo? All right, I guess I'm done. What do you think? So here it is. This is adding Dr. P.H. Martin's Radiant Concentrated Watercolor and Winsor & Newton's Designer Gouache. So that's the first one, and I love the way it came out. I love the way the colors are, and I think it's super fun. I just had so much fun painting this. It was a ball. I absolutely loved it. Now for a super detailed photo, it came out awesome. All right, so here's the next illustration. Yeah, look at this. So I started drawing that and his face, and it didn't turn out too good. Really wasn't pleased with it, so I didn't want to waste the page. So I am adding it into this illustration with this cute little 1950s car and this house in the wintertime. This illustration is a little simpler. for us to, for you to watch. And again, I'm going to be translating colors and being creative with it. I'm drawing using the S-Gel pen again, and I'm going to be adding in some really cool colors with this. So I hope you enjoy this illustration as well. Again, reaffirming the technique, and these steps are exactly the same as I did in the first illustration. If you skipped right to this one, if you want to go back and watch the first one with the checkout at the grocery store, it's pretty much the same thing, except this illustration is less detailed. So this is cold press watercolor paper, and it's 100% cotton. And this S-Gel pen works like a charm on it. The coarse texture of the paper really grabs the pen, and I absolutely love it on here. All right, so this is a cute little illustration. Again, I wasn't worried about accuracy. I was more worried about the colors and the color translation. But the way the card turned out, I love it. It's super cute. All right, so that little card that was in the sample on my phone, I wanted to kind of go with that color scheme, make it like a teal, soft eggshell blue, or robin eggshell blue, I guess what you want to say, like a sky blue with just a hint of green in it. And this color is two-toned, so wait till you see what I do with this. I'm going to make the car all one color, but I'm going to keep the roof the white. But I want the whole car to be this tealy color, so I'm not going to make it two-toned. So again, just using the dropper bottle, dropping it on, and dragging the color. If I stuck my paintbrush into the jar and kept dipping in, I would taint the color inside the bottle with whatever is on my brush, and you can't see if it's tainted because of being inside the bottle until you actually apply it onto your paper. So that's why I choose to use the dropper that is given. So the house, I've got the green on the car. The house, I'm going to say is maybe a grayish brown. I've got some dark values for the shadowing under the car. So I'm going to keep the dark values, the slate blue under the car, and that seems to be pretty much the darkest, and also under the wheel well of that front right tire. So those are really, really dark areas, and they're a cool dark because of the snow, I'm assuming. It's like blacktop driveway. And so I'm going to choose the colors and render accordingly. And the house color is, I would say, about a 40% in the value range. So I'm going to make the house maybe a little bit darker. So we'll get to that point when we get to the gouache. So I'm just adding in some shadowing, and now I'm going to be going into some of the lighter spots in the photo. This will be for the sky and for some of the highlights. So you can see this color is really light when I lay it on, and I probably have a lot of water on my brush, so I'm going to reapply and add a little bit more because I want it a little bit more intense. When I add the gouache down, if I just left it that first color that I put down, not add any more, it totally would have wiped away that yellowy orange color. So I'm also reflecting that color and having that cast onto the roof of the car as well as into the windows. So I'm making that back corner pretty dark. So again, going with these swatches, trying to decide what color do I want to use. So I can add in that brown, but also these color play that I did while I was waiting for some other colors to come in for the PH Martins. Again, that's in the swatching video. Mixing these colors together to get a green that I think would accurately represent the color value of the tree in the background. Always remember to shake up those bottles really good. They settle super quick. So flip the bottle over first to make sure that cap is on tight. Flip the bottle over and check to see if your pigment has settled. And if so, you want to give it a really good shake and check it again. It's going to take a little bit if your bottles have been settling for a while. Just give it a really good shake to make sure that your pigment is accurately combined with the binder that's in the paint. So I'm adding in some other colors in here. I decided to make this a sunset photo versus a daytime photo. I thought it would give a little more interest to have maybe some light peeking out of the windows. Maybe it's dusk, early evening. Here in Western New York in the wintertime, especially around December, January, it gets dark probably around 4:30, and that time of night when it reflects on the snow and it reflects on the elements around, it just gives that warm glow in the wintertime, and it's very inviting to make that house look like it's warm and cozy, and people just got home maybe from shopping and they're inside making dinner and the kids are settling in, and just to help tell the story, help build that illustration and enhance that time period. So with the sunset, you're going to have cast colors on the roof, especially because that roof has snow on it. And also the reflection and cast of the colors on the snow that's on the driveway. So I am creating that warm ambiance of the day, the evening, the sun setting, and creating that vintage time frame that this was captured in. All right, so again, going back to my swatches, I'm pulling up some of this purple that I really like. I'm trying to decide on what other colors I want to add into that snow. I really want to add in some beautiful yellows and some reflections. In the wintertime here, when you have a shadow on the snow, it has that purple cast to it. So I'm gonna play around with that and think about that a little bit more. So again, this is just tinting the paper, and again, we're gonna be pulling up some of these colors through the gouache and creating different layers of the PH Martins and the gouache together. So I'm adding in some shadowing underneath the windowsills and on the eaves and the fascia of the house, and to create that overhang of the house. So using the mop brush instead of using a smaller brush helps push the color around in a wider swath than getting caught up in little detailed area too much with the PH Martins. Basically, I just want to block in this color. So using this clumsy mop brush, that's perfect enough. It works out really good. It takes a hold of the color and moves it, and I'm not caught up in the detail right now. So I'm just getting this color blocking in to where I need it to be, and I'm just worried about value right now. All right, so I'm just adding in some final highlights, some final colors. And again, because these colors are very transparent, you will see color mixing on top of each other. So adding in this yellow over the top of the pink will create that orange color. Very much like stained glass, where for the gouache you'll get some opaques, and for the for the Dr. P.H. Martins, it's complete transparency on top of transparency. All right, so here's what I have. It's a beautiful mess. It is beautiful. You can leave it just the way it is and just use it for a value study, or you can keep going, which I am, and keep the theme of the video going. So I'm going to be adding in my Winsor Newton gouache. I'm going to start with this cute little 1/8 inch filbert. I've had this for years. In fact, I think it was my grandmother's. So I've had it since the 90s. So I'm going to be working in some of the detail, and I'm going to be starting with the house. Now, the way that this house looks, it looks like maybe it's cedar shingle that's been painted. It has that vertical texture to it. It could be siding, rough cut wood siding. It's hard to tell. Or it could be prefabricated siding. But I'm going to keep my brush strokes very choppy and little and vertical. And I'm going to be following along with my pen lines that I created with my S-Gel pen, and creating these lines that kind of follow along with these slats. So I'm adding in some more layers. And again, this paint, the Winsor Newton gouache, I'm working quite thin. I would say it's a little bit thicker than milk, maybe a heavy cream, if you were, trying to mix it according to what I have, just to give it some layers. So right now I got the first colors down, but I really am anxious to work on this car. I've been I keep looking at it and I can't think about working on this house and I'm working on this car when I want to work on this car. So I'm picking up this number 4 Pinturl brush, and it's a round, great point and great spring. So I picked up the zinc white and I'm adding in some white, and it's mixing in with the green underneath. As you can see, the right here especially, you can see that the brush with the gouache is picking up that Dr. P.H. Martin's underneath, especially because I really loaded that car up with a lot of green paint. So I'm mixing in these 2 paints together, and because I have that like grass green and that tealier jungle green together, you can see those different colors on the car. So it's not one solid, boring green color. You have some variation. So I'm just adding in more layers of this zinc white right now. And at the end, I'll add in some permanent white for some real striking white areas. But for right now, just adding in this zinc white, blending these colors together, and building up the cute retro teal of this car. So I kind of stumbled across this technique when I was playing. When I got all my sets that came in for my Dr. P.H. Martin's, I was playing with the gouache and the P.H. Martin's to try to come up with some fun new techniques, because I tend to get very stagnant in my illustrations. I've went for years painting the exact same way with just gouache, or drawing the exact same way with just my barrel Prismacolors, or not barrel anymore, my Prismacolor pencils, and not experimenting and exploring with different mediums, or a collaboration of mediums together. So this year, it's May now, so this year especially, from January till now, so like 5 months, I've been really experimenting and exploring with different mediums. And I have really been inspired by a lot of artists on YouTube that I've been watching, and completely inspired to play. And I think that that's something that's been lacking in my artwork for many years. And I have been very stagnant for a long time. And I think when you get into that rut for a while, it makes you not enjoy what you're doing anymore. As a creative, you want to keep pushing the boundaries and keep being creative and keep feeding your soul and your creativity. And I think when you get stuck into certain techniques, especially when you're commissioned for some pieces that require the same technique. I've illustrated a couple children's books, and that had the same technique, and each of them had about 70 illustrations. And I've also commissioned portraits and other works that the technique and the paint, everything was very repetitious and very stagnant. And after a while, you don't feel inspired anymore. So I encourage you, if you don't already, to check out some other artists on YouTube, and also go on Pinterest, go into some art books that you have and just rejuvenate your soul with some new techniques, and just grab the supplies you already have and just start playing around and see what you come up with. Honestly, that's probably been the best thing this year that has happened to me is just playing with new techniques and building a whole new arsenal of artwork. So adding in the permanent white right now for the top of the car. You also can see the highlights from the sky and the roof reflecting on as the paint dries and soaks into the paper. The color from the Dr. P.H. Martin's still likes to come through. All right, so here is so far. It's getting there. Again, you can stop at this point. You can keep going. You can play with other mediums and add in over the top. But adding in this gouache to create more detail like I did in the first illustration really ties this piece together and creates that story. I also feel like gouache was used a lot with a lot of advertising and product illustrations, travel posters, and other vintage and retro art. And I really like the flatness of gouache. And again, working with the luminosity of the Dr. P.H. Martin's underneath gives a whole new depth to just the pure flatness of the gouache. If you've been watching the whole video, I thank you so much. I'm hoping you're getting something out of this. I hope that you're feeling inspired to create. And even if you only have 1 or 2 bottles of this, feel free to create. Even if you just create a monotone undertone instead of all the colors, even if you just use one color as undertones, you're still going to get great results with this technique. I know this video is quite long, but I really wanted to show you this and this style. Look at this car. It's so cute. And the flatness is still flat, but you have some richness popping through. And I really wanted to show you this. And having these 2 illustrations, 2 different compositions will hopefully give you the encouragement that you can pick up any photo, even if it is colored, to pick up any photo and just run with it. If you're liking my videos, or if this is the first one you've seen and you really like it and you would like to see more, if you hit the subscribe button, that would help me out and my channel oh so very much, and I would deeply appreciate it. Thanks. Again, my car does not really look like the car that I'm painting from. However, this is art, and I am teaching myself to be more loose because I'm a very tight illustrator. I am teaching myself to just let the art be what it is, and it's going to be exactly how it's supposed to be in the end. And I am going to make sure that I push through the process and enjoy it and not get so caught up in perfection and not get caught up in precision. I'm going to really fully embrace the rendering process in these illustrations. I'm trying to think what else I need to do, what else I need to add. When I work on these photos, I'm constantly deciding and analyzing what information I want to put in my composition. Again, just like the first illustration that I painted, background information is background information, and I need it to stay in the background. The main focal point in this photo is obviously the car, then the house, and then the surrounding of the snow. So in that order of importance. So telling the story and making the viewer focus on the car first is priority for me, then the surroundings. So I'm popping in more shadowing in the cars, into the car. I'm adding in some darker areas around the tires, around the wheel wells, and popping out the hubcaps, because these hubcaps have some really cute detail in them. And you can see a lot of the rivets, you can see the bolts, and the sheen of that chrome is also the snow, and the colors of the snow are reflected in it. So I want to make sure that I create that. So when you look at it, you can tell that it's chrome. All right, so I'm taking this little tiny brush. This little tiny brush is a 10-0, which means it's super itty bitty, super little. But if you load it up with thick paint, it becomes really heavy and clumsy. So again, I'm using a very light, very thin coat of gouache on this, and I'm making that top rail. I think it's maybe for luggage or just for looks. I'm not sure what they were used for. I'm assuming luggage, but I'm adding that top rail with this little brush. It's perfect for it. All right, back to the round, and I'm going to be adding in just a few more details with this. And going back to this brush, again, I had to chop it up in order to get everything in a timely video. So I did add in some details with both brushes. All right, so this is the end. This is the finished product. What do you think about this one? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. This is the way it looked at the end, and I hope you liked it. I hope you like the process, and I hope you get something out of this. Feel free to explore. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time, and God bless you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.